The only way to truly gain respect for rain is to be forced to endure it in its fullest force. You simply can't fully understand the magnitude and power it has from the comforts of your house. You have to be exposed. A number of years ago, the Boy Scout troop I was in was doing our annual fundraiser to pay for a week-long camping trip that we had once a year with a whole bunch of other troops. And to raise enough money, we would go on a 2 to 3 day logging trip in the forests. Basically, the adults would cut down the trees and us boys would help split it into pieces that could be used for firewood. It's somewhat of an oversimplification of how much work it actually was, but I think you get the general idea. I remember what a slap in the face by reality the first woodcutting trip was. It was beyond miserable. Sawdust got everywhere, the chainsaws and wood splitter machines were loud, and even if you wore gloves, little slivers of wood... Excuse me. Okay. Little slivers of wood managed to get stuck in your hands. Not to mention some of the trees had sap on them, and I, being unprepared, accidentally had my sweatshirt ruined by that sap. All this, trapped in the middle of some random forest in the mountains, made for an agonizing 3 days. But I had gone on the woodcutting trip for a couple years now, and so this year I felt slightly more prepared than the previous years. The first sign that this was going to be terrible all over again was when the only campsite in the area with running water was full. Oh, but don't worry, there was still plenty of running water at the other campsite. The only catch is, it poured from the sky the moment we got there, and literally did not stop. Our tents were wet inside and out. Miraculously, one of the adults had given me a trash bag to put my other bags in, which was the only reason all my belongings weren't completely soaked through. Day and night, working, eating, and sleeping, the rain never ended. It's difficult to explain how terrible being wet all the time makes everything. It's cold, it's kind of muddy. Sure, you could get a fire going, but it did little to warm you up. The sun may as well have not existed during those few days. All you could see were gray clouds stretching across the entire sky. To say I suffered would be an understatement. It felt like torture. But on the second day, with the rain continuing to pour, I was on break with a few other boys, although I had wandered off by myself. Perhaps the rain was easing up a little, or maybe it was simply the fact that the day before had taken its toll. But when it felt like I was completely out of hope, that moment when I had given up any effort to keep myself dry, I had this understanding, I guess you'd call it. I thought to myself, you know what? It doesn't matter what happens during the rest of this day, and the day tomorrow. Eventually, we'll get back in our cars and drive back to town, where I'll be able to go home. From home, I can recover from this. I'll be able to wash and dry out all my clothes, and sleeping bag, and everything else that have been soaked. It doesn't matter if the rain won't stop, or if I'm worked to death, or even if I break an arm or something awful like that. There's a sanctuary out there called home, and I know that I'll be there in a couple of days. I can endure this. This too shall pass. It is not forever. It's not eternal. And as long as I'm not dead, then I can make it through. The respect I gained for rain came a little bit after this epiphany. It really is amazing. It's not evil, nor is it good. It simply just is what it is. Hundreds, probably millions, if not more, individual drops of water that fall from who knows how high up all the way down to the ground, leaving no square inch dry over who knows how gigantic of an area. It has been quite a few years since that woodcutting trip, and I probably have grown slightly forgetful of the true power of rain. But let's be honest, it is a little bit easier to love the rain when you're inside. And even though it is inconvenient at its least, and horrible at its worst, it is quite humbling to know that, at least for now, there are still things like the rain that are out of our control. Even though this was one of the most miserable struggles of my life, you really do need to experience the lowest of lows to just realize how high the highs really are. And while you're in those moments that are the absolute worst, who knows? You just may learn to appreciate the very thing that makes you miserable.